Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you for attending this evening's session and welcome you to the third session of the Eyes on Every Ballot Election Observer Training, sponsored by the Virginia Project. I'm Ned Jones, and I'm the Election Integrity Director for the Virginia Project. The Virginia Project is a partisan political action committee that is dedicated to helping rebuild the Republican Party in Virginia. As a part of that effort, tonight and next Thursday night, we're conducting 30-minute training sessions for election observers. We hope that our training will enhance all the other training that's available for election observers. Sponsored by the state, conducted by the Republican Party, the political campaigns, and other groups around Virginia. In our first session, we covered what happened in the election in November and why we need an army of observers with eyes on every ballot. In all, 133 plus in-person early voting precincts, CAP centers for all 45 days of early voting and absentee processing, and in all 2,451 precincts on election day for the election that starts in now 22 days. Last week, we covered the duties for the three types of election observers: officers of election, poll watchers, and seasonal workers. Tonight, we'll discuss how you apply for each election observer position and the required training for each. Please hold your questions and comments to the end of the presentation. Many of you are experienced election observers, and I look forward to your input this evening. Before I start with the training, I want to talk about something that we brought up last week and is ongoing. An organization in Chicago, the Center for Voter Information, Washington, D.C., the Center for Voter Information and Voter Participation Center, is in the process of mailing out 2.1 million absentee ballot applications to voters in Virginia. They did the same thing last year in the general election. We believe that there is a scheme involved to find voters who no longer are at their address. When these mailing pieces can't be delivered, they don't get them back. They get a list from the Postal Service of the address and why the mail couldn't be delivered. So they find voters who have either moved, died, listed under a maiden name, and so forth. And we believe that somehow, and this has not been proven yet, they're able to cast votes for those people. Well, they're doing it again with the 2.1 million absentee ballot applications that are being mailed out in the couple of weeks. I think they finish up the first week of September. They're going to get the same list, the list that we call unlikely voters. And so if our theory is correct, they'll be doing the same thing in this election. Now, we need your help, and we've had a tremendous outpouring on this. If anyone receives one of these mailings from the Center for Voter Information or the Voter Participation Center, please make copies or photos and send it to me at njones@virginiaproject.com. That's njones@virginiaproject.com. What we're doing is we're looking at last year with the names to see if something might have happened with those same voters last year for their other mailing. And we're also going to track the voters that we receive the names of in the next election to see if we can find a pattern or a trend. Okay, now this evening, the first position that we'll discuss is the officer of election. The officer of election is a paid position, and the main duty is to ensure that the election is conducted according to Virginia state law. You apply at your local registrar's office and then contact your local Republican unit committee to let them know that you've applied, because you do have to receive a recommendation from the chairman of the local unit to the registrar. Now, something that we learned this week in Virginia for early voting, now this is the in-person early voting, there are no officers of election, only seasonal workers in the registrar's office, and we can have poll watchers. And we'll discuss those two positions in a minute. So we need you to apply to be an officer of election because you'll be working on days in what we call the CAP, the Central Absentee Precinct, to process absentee ballots. and on election day. And we want to have 100% coverage. So we need everyone to apply to be an officer of election. Now, one thing that happened to me, I applied through a website that the state controls. It's just a very simple form that you fill out, and it's supposed to go to your local registrar. Well, mine never showed up. You do have to indicate party on the form. So I called the registrar, and they mailed me the paperwork directly. I filled it out and returned it. And today I heard back from them with 3 weeks to go. They wanted me to fill out a W-9, which I didn't receive initially. So I'm in line now to be an officer of election with my registrar. Now, the training for officers of election is conducted by the registrar's office. It's called the state training. All officers of election have to take it. And in addition to that, this year, which will be new, the state party, the RPV, will be conducting training not just for poll workers, but for officers of election. So apply now at your registrar's office, get in touch with your local GOP unit, and become an election officer. We're entitled to 50% of the election officers in the election. If there's 4 at a location, we'll have 2, and the Dems will have 2. The next position we're going to talk about is poll watcher. Now, poll watcher is an unpaid volunteer position. The main duty of the poll watcher is to observe the manner in which the election is being conducted and report to Republican officials and record any irregularities. The exact date for applying to be a poll worker has not been established yet, but we'll let you know as soon as we hear from the GOP. The RPV controls the poll watchers, and you'll apply for that position with your local GOP unit. And again, we'll let you know as soon as that date is available. Now, the primary training for the poll watcher is by the Republican Party of Virginia. I took it last year. It's about a 2-hour Zoom training. However, we're doing our training. There's other training that's going on from other organizations around the state. And I urge you to become a poll watcher and take all the training that you can find. Now, the poll watchers will be there for all 45 days of early voting. They'll be wherever voters are showing up to vote, and they'll be there when absentee ballot envelopes are received at the registrar's office. Something that was confirmed this week, in Virginia, we do not check the signature on an absentee ballot envelope against anything. So anyone can fill out that ballot and sign that envelope. There's no check on the signature. That's why we need poll watchers there, watching the envelopes being received, watching the early voters coming in to vote. There's probably going to be way in excess of 133 locations where this is going on. So we truly need an army of poll watchers to accomplish that task. And just so you know, you can be both an election officer of election, and a poll watcher. The final position that we want to talk about is called a seasonal worker. The seasonal worker is a part-time paid position in the registrar's office. They hire additional staff because of the massive amount of early voting and absentee voting that's going to happen in this election. These workers usually work 2 or 3 days a week, and their duties are to assist the election office staff, the registrar's office staff, with early voting, both in person and processing absentee ballot applications. And I believe they do work when they're processing absentee ballots in the CAP. Now, as I just said, we cannot have officers of election in the in-person early voting locations. So we need to have full coverage with seasonal workers, as many as we can get hired by the registrars. In my case, I applied to be a seasonal worker in my registrar's office, and coincidentally, I heard from them today, and it sounds like I may get that position as well. So I'll be a seasonal worker a couple of days a week. I'll be an election officer of election when necessary, and I'm going to learn a lot about the election, and I'm going to keep my eyes on every ballot. Now, that's how you apply for the 3 positions. If we get to the 100% coverage that we're talking about, we'll truly have eyes on every ballot and will mitigate the potential for fraud. Next Thursday, September 2nd at 7 p.m., we'll talk about the specific things that election observers will be looking for and what actions you can take to mitigate any potential fraud. All of these sessions are being recorded, and the recordings will be available to anyone for distribution to anyone. Okay, I'll be happy to answer your questions. We want to try to keep it at 30 minutes if possible. So if anyone has any questions, just ask away.
How do we, if signature is not required, how do we determine if it's a fraudulent vote on the mail-in ballots?
I don't think you can.
You can't. You cannot do it. You can't. That's the law in Virginia. They don't have to check the signature against anything. So we think that the mailing out of the absentee ballot applications and getting a list of voters who are not at their registered address is a way for them to get a list of unlikely voters. And it's very conceivable that those names are being used both absentee and actually even in person.
Is it correct that you don't have to have a ID to vote now in Virginia?
Yeah. In Virginia, you don't need a photo ID. You don't need an ID. You don't need a utility bill. All you need to do is sign a form that says ID confirmation, subject to felony charge if you're lying. You just sign your name, you print and sign your name. It even says the address is not mandatory.
Ned, do you have a list yet of the scheduled when the Republican Party will be holding their training?
No, sir. All they're saying right now is late August, early September, and they're going to announce a date when they'll take applications for poll watchers.
Ned, I turned in my paperwork to the registrar a couple weeks ago and left 3 messages with the registrar and left 2 messages with my GOP chairman, and I have yet to hear from anyone. Any suggestions on what I can do?
If it's convenient, I would go there. In my case, the registrar finally got back to me after 2 weeks. 2 people called today from the office. You have to be persistent because what we're hearing is there's actually resistance. We're being ignored, and to some degree, there's resistance. So you just have to be really persistent. If it persists, please email me that you're having difficulty, because there's a lawyer who wants to file a lawsuit if they really try to keep us out of the polls.
Ned, I have a question. Do you have to apply for all the 3 positions as a Democrat or Republican? Can you apply as an independent? Does that mean you get stuck in a corner? Or what happens?
Here's what happens. They should fill the positions 50% Republican and 50% Democrat. The only place you have to indicate party is officer of election. Now, obviously, if you become a poll watcher, they know you're a Republican. And the seasonal worker is, quote, nonpartisan. One of the things they do is they put independents on in the officer of election, but they're really Democrats. And this has been proven in the past. So we urge everyone to apply as an officer of election as a Republican and follow the steps that we described.
Ned?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Jan Jordan. I'm working with the State Coalition on Election Integrity.
Yes.
And I've listened to Clarabelle Wheeler's presentation. And I just wondered, are you going to outline the new election laws that they kicked in effective 1 July? Because I know no voter ID is one, right?
Pardon me?
Are there others that we should be aware of?
Well, yeah, what'll happen is the RPV, the Republican Party, is going to, they cover the change in law in the poll watcher training. And I know Clarabelle Wheeler does. I was at the summit this last weekend and listened to her presentation. And then the registrar's office will cover the changes in the law as they train the officers of election and their seasonal workers. So yes, it will. We're not going to cover it here, but it will definitely be covered. Our training next week is going to be what we call aggressive, respectful observation.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ned, I think you need to stress also that we are really in need of getting people to do it now, not wait. I've already done it, and I've been accepted as election officer, but it takes time for them to go through. They had to do a background check, FBI, that kind of stuff, and then you got to go in and fill out all the forms and all that. So don't delay. Get it done.
Very good, and thank you for that. Can I just mention one thing in the middle of our questions? I think it's really important. One thing you can do is vote on September 17th, or if you work, on Saturday the 18th. What that does is it protects your vote because you're marked as voted, and no one in this election can steal your vote. If you vote on the very first day or the second day, no one can steal your vote. You're marked as voted, and it's done.
Is voting this November?
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
The election now is this November, and the term starts January 1 of 2022, correct?
I didn't get all that. The election starts on September 17th. It's 45 days. Election day is November, but the election is 45 days. And I didn't get the comment about January.
And January 1, that's when they're sworn in, governor and blah, blah, blah.
The election for governor is starting in 22 days.
Gotcha. All right, so basically right now, they could still, even if we're got all our eyes on it, they could still conceivably stuff the ballots.
Well, that's correct. But we feel like the thing they don't want is that spotlight shined on them. And we think we're going to mitigate the fraud by being there and having 100% coverage. I mean, that's all we can do. You know, everybody plays the hand they're dealt. And unfortunately, our legislature made it extremely easy to perpetuate voter fraud. We're not accusing anyone, but they made it extremely easy to cheat. And so what we say is make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. But that's not going to happen in Virginia until we take the state back, which hopefully is going to happen this fall. But all we can do is what we can do. And what the best we can do in 22 days is become observers and have an army of eyes on every ballot.
Okay, hey, Ned, how do we know if we're still lacking individuals? Like, in other words, if we're down, I could get the word out to maybe friends or whatever that they could come in and sign up to be, you know, an observer or poll watcher.
Well, because there's 133 locations and because it's spread out all over the state, it's going to be very hard to know where there are, you know, shortfalls in what we're trying to do. We hope that, you know, people report that either through the local GOP units or in some fashion communicate it that they're short people, because neighboring voting locations can send people. We can actually send people to apply. You don't have to do it in your own precinct or your own locality.
So we could poll watch up in Fairfax?
Yes, sir.
Because I saw something very odd during the 2022 election that they stopped counting and suddenly Trump is behind, even though he was ahead by 100,000 votes. And then they started counting again and the line went straight up, boom. So I was rather dismayed to witness that.
Well, what we're hoping this time is that we're there. You know, last time we weren't. This time we want to be there when every ballot's counted, and that's the most we can do. And we got 22 days to set it up.
What do you do in that situation? So you see something.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The situation in the middle of the night.
Well, for example, when I was a officer of the election or a poll watcher, I can't remember which, there was a Democrat poll watcher that was acting as an advocate for the various voters. And I don't think that's allowed.
No.
What should happen in that?
Okay, here's what's supposed to happen. That is not allowed. No one can assist a voter unless they're handicapped and they fill out the form. We've been assured by the Republican Party of Virginia that we're going to have a hotline with a human for all 45 days, that whoever it is in any location, when you see something like that, you immediately call the hotline and report it. That's something that should not be happening. But don't feel bad. I was a poll watcher, and you're supposed to fill out your provisional ballot alone, and they had 4 or 5 people sitting around a table chatting and filling out their ballots. So we're going to be on top of all of that kind of activity. And that's why we say we're going to be respectfully aggressive. We're not going to let the Democrats push us around this time.
Ned, this is Andy Bayer. Can I say something?
Hi, Andy. Sure.
Okay, so we're up here in Fairfax County, and we had an hour-and-a-half meeting today with the general registrar to tie up loose questions. Up here, fortunately, because we've been working nonstop since January, we do have our act together, and it takes actually getting a hold of the voter rolls. It takes going over the laws with a fine-tooth comb. It takes submitting an insurmountable number of FOIAs, and it takes some maneuvering to get ahead of them. And I feel like we're ahead of them. We are ready to start trainings for our poll watchers, which are phenomenal. And I'd like to say that we can and hope to take the training we've put together and share it to all of the units. We don't want it sent out and disseminated via email because we don't want it to get in the wrong hands. That said, I would love to take what we've done and do Zoom sessions for anybody who wants them. We're doing Q&A sessions, but I think the time is of the essence. We have flyers that we've been giving out for recruiting poll watchers and election officers. We have numbers set up. We have websites set up so that they are forwarded to us. We have learned a lot. It's hard to disseminate that in a timely fashion, especially to units that don't have their act together. But there are some basic steps that every unit could take. And I think prioritization is key. And any units that are interested or people that are interested, maybe we can set up a couple of sessions for you guys to call. Yeah.
Andy, what we can do is everybody on this call can send an email to me at njones@virginiaproject.com, and we can kind of get a list together of interested people. And I'll get back with you on it. It sounds fantastic, and
perfect.
Look forward to working with you on it. Are there
sure,
any other questions?
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to see if we're trying to keep it at 30 minutes.
Oh, I know. And you can give out my email, whatever.
Okay, super.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think if there's any one thing we can do that'll help, I know in the people, I've got a list of 45 people or 50 people poll watching, is everybody is looking forward to the training and being advised what to do. And we really need the Republican Party to get that out and get going. We're only a couple, they say, 20 some days before early voting.
I can't agree with you more. And we're
Hey,
hoping
guys,
that we hear very soon from them.
Hey, I do have one question. Would it be better off if we have our poll watchers make sure that we do the locations like Richmond, Virginia, Norfolk, all the places that are Democratic strongholds, because those would be the places where they would be able to really stuff the ballots as opposed to Republican strongholds.
All right, the reason we need the 100% coverage everywhere, if we're right about our theory, they can cheat in every single precinct, because what they're doing is, it's a statewide election. They're finding voters that are no longer at their address all over the state. And with
Gotcha.
mail-in voting, I can mail my ballot from Richmond to Blacksburg. So we need people at every location, 100% coverage.
Okay. All right. The only thing I could say is I'm hoping that, and there's no way we could find out if we do have this 100% coverage or how close we are.
Yeah, there's no central reporting on that, unfortunately. I'm just hoping that the local units will react to a shortage.
Ned, I have two quick questions.
Yes.
This is Tammy Thomas.
Hi.
My first question is that you said that all the trainings were going to be recorded. I need to know when they will be available and how to find them, because we're just tuning in tonight for the first time. So we've missed the previous ones. I'd like to be able to find them and view and also send. And then I have a second quick follow-up question.
Okay, the first question is, we're going to send them out as soon as they're available. And what we've been doing is sending, like this time, we'll send all three. And then when we send the reminder for next week, we'll include the 3 videos with the reminder.
That's through email?
Yes.
Okay. My next question, tell me if this is incorrect. I have a friend who applied to be a election official in New Kent County, and she got all the paperwork, and she said that on her paperwork, it said that she had to agree that she had to represent either the Republican or Democratic side, and she wasn't willing to fill out the paperwork because she didn't want to get, what's the word?
I guess
Obligated to the the Democrats. Is that?
Well,
was she just misreading that?
Yeah, here's what happens there. By law, it's 50% Republican and 50% Democrat in terms of the officers. So we want our election officials to be Republicans. Now, if you're there because you're a Republican observer, that's why they want you to fill out. I didn't have to fill out a form. I just checked the box, but I guess each registrar is going to be different. But what we want is Republican officers of election. That's how we get our 50%.
So you haven't heard of anybody saying that you agree to represent either side?
Well, I've not heard the term agree to represent. In my case, I just had to check a box claiming what I was. So I'm not sure what agree to represent means.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question real
Sure.
quick. I haven't heard anything from my unit chair. How do we sign up for this RPV poll watcher training?
Contact your unit chair, and I'd be persistent. I've heard some stories around the state that they don't always get right back to you, but I would be persistent. We need to do this. And they should know that we need. They just had a statewide meeting this past weekend as well, and I hope that was stressed.
Ned?
I'll ask them the next meeting. Thank you.
Ned?
Yes.
Yeah, I met you at the Chesterfield event on Sunday, which was pretty cool. Election integrity event they had there. Just real quick, one thing that's being talked about here, and I guess it's been stressed, but about the local GOP units. And that's where a lot of the questions can be answered regarding the poll watcher training and things of that nature. I know a lot of things like we've been talking about the Republican Party of Virginia doing training and so forth. But the real place you can go is the local units there. And the thing is this, like you kind of alluded to, some are better than others. For the folks who don't know, they can go to virginia.gop. That's the main site, virginia.gop. And that's the Republican Party of Virginia website. There's a link at the top called Contacts. You click on that, and it has a list of every single unit in Virginia, all of them. And on those, there's an individual website link and also email contact information. I went through some of those, and you're going to find that some have good websites, some have no websites, some have Facebook pages, some just bounce you right back to the main site. So that gives you some indication of how active they are or what they're all about. But I urge everybody to go to those individual GOP sites, contact the local unit, and see what they're doing. For example, in ours down here in Williamsburg, we have a list that we sign up for all the poll workers, poll watchers, and things of that nature, and we're tracking that to make sure we have 100% coverage. I'm sure a lot of units are probably doing that, but like you said, there's no centralized way to do it. But get with your individual unit and see what they're doing, and use that contact information on the main site.
Yeah, you're going to have to work with the local unit. That's the best way to do it, because that's how you're going to become a poll watcher.
Well, I have
Your
a
local
question.
registrar to become an officer.
Hello, can you hear me? I don't know.
Yes.
Well, he's talking about local units, and I don't know the structure that's set up for the RPV. But when you have a unit that doesn't respond to you whatsoever, and then you also try to contact the RPV and tell them you have an unresponsive unit, can you be put on an email list? They don't respond. So I don't know how Virginia is going to take back anything with this type of leadership.
Okay.
It's really, really sad.
Can you all do me a favor? If you're running into that issue, and many of you have mentioned it tonight, please send me an email. It's njones@virginiaproject.com.
I've contacted you before. I've contacted you before, and it's for York County GOP, and they are non-existent. And I just sent an email today. You go to their Facebook page, and they say we won't respond to this Facebook.
Okay, we're in touch with the leadership, and one thing I can tell you they've done a week ago, they hired an election integrity director who we're in touch with. We're in touch with the chairman. And so if you're having this problem of communication with the local unit, your local unit, please email me, njones@virginiaproject.com, and we'll get in touch with the leadership about that unit. We have to fix this problem now.
Well, I hope so. It's awfully strange. So
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, you're right. Okay, we're close now. Does anybody else have any other questions tonight? All right. Thank you all very much for coming this evening. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week on Thursday night at 7. Thank you very much.
Hey, Ned.
Yes.
Ned, one more thing. We got two conflicting flyers that Youngkin was having a meeting on Sunday and Monday. Are they at the same location, or are they different locations?
Yeah, you'd have to ask the campaign. We don't know about the plans of the campaign directly. That would be something that they'd have to answer.
All right, I got you. All right, Ned.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ned.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.